it is indefensible that in the state of Minnesota that we have not come up with a local and a statewide plan to further help out individuals battling enormous financial issues because of COVID-19. We've also talked for months and months that initially there were very positive relief plans worked on by both sides of the aisle, worked on by the White House also, but lacking for months and months now. We're not going to bring on two guests who are trying to bridge that gap with the Problem Solvers Caucus, a Democrat and a Republican working together and potentially passing a bill for $900 billion. Dean Phillips, Congressman, 3rd District, has joined this show many, many times before. And for the first time, Congressman Dusty Johnson from South Dakota is with us. They are both on the CenterPoint Energy Home Service Plus hotline. Dean, I'll start with you. Tell me about your fellow congressman and why you have worked with him on this bill and on other bills.
Well, good afternoon, Chad, and hello to my friend and colleague, Dusty Johnson. I hope this might be the first time you've had a Democrat and Republican on the same show. Is that right, Chad?
In a while. Definitely in a while. It doesn't happen enough, and it's disheartening.
Well, for those of you who are losing faith in our government and in Congress's ability to work together, I'm happy to point out that Dusty and I are just two of 50 members of the Problem Solvers Caucus who have almost a singular ideology, which is respect, decency, and cooperation. And I got to tell you that, Chad, I've told you before, when I arrived in Washington after being newly elected in early 2019, I was astounded by how quickly the systematic separation began between members of both parties. And Dusty and I happen to be a couple people that believe in cooperation and became friends because of our work together on the Problem Solvers Caucus. And when we saw, after months and months of failure by leadership in both parties to reach a conclusion on the COVID relief plan, we thought we should give it a try. And we got together, put a small working group together along with our co-chairs of the Problem Solvers Caucus, and created what we called the March to Common Ground. And it was well received by the White House, rank and file Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate, but it didn't make it to the goal line before the holidays. So during Thanksgiving, along with senators in the upper chamber, we reconvened and came out with another plan, the $908 billion plan that is getting awfully close to conclusion, we believe. And you asked about Dusty. He's a gentleman, a principled man, someone who I've come to respect, appreciate, and really enjoy my time with. And it makes me hopeful. Dusty Johnson makes me hopeful about the future of our Congress.
Well, and here's what's Dusty, bringing the conversation. Thanks for coming on. Let's talk about this number. It's around $900 billion. We've had a lot of figures on bills passed. At one point, Congress, the House side, passed one bill for $3.4 trillion. The Republicans felt like that was too high. The White House, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, and others. It seemed like, as Dean Phillips was talking about, maybe a month or so before the election, there was talk about $1.8 trillion. And the White House was in that area, and Speaker Pelosi felt like, no, that wasn't enough. If it's $900 billion at this point, sir, why is that enough? Why is that the right number at this point?
Well, I think two things. First off, that $1.8 trillion was never going to happen. I mean, the White House was a very motivated buyer of such a deal, and I think they were putting some numbers to the Speaker that, frankly, they could never have gotten through the Senate. I just believe that with my whole heart. I think you've also seen that there's a recognition by people on Dean's side of the aisle and mine that we need some emergency relief right now. And frankly, we'd be better off if we could have gotten $1 trillion done 3 months ago. And this is not the kind of thing that's going to take care of all of the problems caused by COVID. This is going to be an airdrop of emergency relief that is going to get us through the next few months. It certainly looks like we're going to have a large variety of new new players in Washington, D.C. come January. And I think there's the understanding that the administration is going to want to work with a different House and a different Senate to be able to put together a package that may go beyond $900 billion. I think, Dean and his colleagues would never say that that's enough, but it's what we need right now. And most importantly, it's what we can get done right now. And shame on us if we don't.
Let me ask you one more question. I'll jump back to Dean here. This does not include checks directly to citizens, as earlier other plans, depending upon wealth in particular. Why isn't that something that shouldn't be insisted upon in this particular plan when so many people feel like they directly to them need money at this particular time?
Yeah, and first I would mention Dean Phillips. He deserves a much larger share of the credit than maybe many Minnesotans assume for getting this jump started. I mean, when he called me back in September and told me we needed to work on this because leadership was failing, I said yes, in part because I feel like these are the conversations we need to have across the aisle. I never assumed that we would be able, because of the phone calls that Dean was making, that we would really be able to hold leadership's feet to the fire and have them on the cusp of this deal as they are on the cusp of getting this deal done. So it's been a pleasure to work with him. And, I think lots of people are open to stimulus checks. The reality is, I think if you make this package a lot larger, you're going to lose Republican votes, and I don't think you're going to have enough Democrat votes to come in and replace the lost Republicans. Politics is the art of the possible. Adding another $300 billion is something that maybe, Congress may well consider that in the new year, but at this point, I think we want to make sure that the vaccine, that the testing, that the schools, that the unemployed, and that the much-needed nutritional and housing assistance, that goes out in a targeted manner to the people who need it the most.
Mm-hmm. And Chad, and I concur with Dusty. He uses the phrase "the art of the possible." That's why we do things differently. We don't sacrifice everything we want in favor of nothing. And recognizing this is for an emergency, short-term relief plan. Dusty knows that I certainly favor direct payments to people who are struggling the most. I think the first round of stimulus checks, the $1,200 checks, served an important purpose, but I think way too many of them went to people who did not need them, and that's a problem. And we're trying not to waste money. This is taxpayer money that we don't have, frankly, because we are so significantly in debt. But I have to say also, when Senators Josh Hawley and Senator Bernie Sanders are both arguing that stimulus checks should be included. And today, I think in fact, last hour or so, President Trump indicated that he would like to see $600 checks included in this plan. There still remains a possibility that they will be added. But to your question, Chad, we tried to find a way to get something done rather than simply add our entire wish list. And everything's important. Everybody's important. And we believe what comes together is going to satisfy just about as much as we could possibly do.
If you're tuning in, Chad Hartman here with you on Newstalk 830 WCCO. It's 245. Congressman Dusty Johnson from South Dakota, Republican. Congressman Dean Phillips, a Democrat from Minnesota, with us on the show. Dean, I saw reporting multiple places in the last 24 hours that part of the sticking point now with parts of Congress in the House and Senate that could slow this down is the debate on liability protection and money towards local governments. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned about those two issues and how the bill might not pass because of holdups on those two important parts of this bill?
Chad, as people are probably aware, Leader McConnell has indicated today that he might propose stripping state and local support out, as well as the liability protections. I believe the state and local support is important for states like Minnesota that had a significant surplus before COVID. We had a little bit of better revenue projection, of course, recently, but the next biennium, things are looking bleak. I think well-managed states that have done the right thing for people, especially absent the federal response that we're trying to rectify right now, are deserving of that consideration. Not every state needs the resources, as Dusty has thoughtfully indicated as well. And I also believe that we have the capacity in Congress to figure out a way to ensure that businesses are not subject to a crush of frivolous lawsuits, while also ensuring that workers are protected and ensuring that workers who are not treated appropriately or unsafely have recourse. That should not be rocket science, but it is a challenge. I think both can be included, but to strip those out of the bill, which would mean sacrificing state support and local support, is very troublesome. But at the end of the day, we have got to get money, most importantly, to the unemployed, to people who are hungry, to schools that are in hospitals that are struggling, and to small businesses that are literally closing by the day. That's why we have got to act, and I surely will support as much as we possibly can get done.
Dusty, I would love to see this get out instantly. I think I echo your words that this should have been done a while ago. We are now down to the last couple weeks of this Congress and the last few weeks of this administration. Do you think you have a better chance to get this bill passed now in December or later in January when we get the new administration and we get a new president?
Oh, we simply can't wait. I mean, you know, the swearing in of the president is on January 20th. I mean, if there are people who think that, Congress can fiddle and wait around until February to do anything, that they're not talking to enough real people out there. And I know that this package is not as big as many want, but, frankly, had we had leadership who was more open to finding common ground, this could have been done 3 months ago. Imagine how much stronger America could be, how much stronger our schools could be if we had taken these needed steps then. So we have got to get it done in the next week. I don't think we'll get it done this week. I think we'll get it done next week, though. And really, shame on us if we don't. And I'm an optimist about it. Winston Churchill said you can always count on the Americans to do the right thing once they've exhausted all other options. And I feel like Congress is getting really close to fulfilling both sides of that ledger.
That's
Last
so
thing,
well
Dusty,
said.
just want to follow up, and then we have to go. When you talk about leadership, who are you talking about? Dean has been very open on this show before about wanting a desire to see different leadership within his party. And he often says, well, but I need individuals to step up. When you talk about a leadership vacuum, who are you referring to?
Well, everybody, and we all know the names, but it is not one person in the House or one person in the Senate. The reality is so much of what they do is an attempt to gain leverage. It's all about leverage every day in this town because they want to win the deal. And Dean's side does it, and my side does it, and the House does it, and the Senate does it. And it is just despicable to me. I mean, I come from a pretty conservative state in South Dakota. But I would tell you one thing that we get right day in and day out when we attempt to govern is that it's not just about the transactional leveraging the hell out of the other side. I feel like in South Dakota and probably in Minnesota, we ask a lot less about what's a win for Democrats or what's a win for Republicans, and we probably ask more about what's a win for the people. That's how Dean and I are wired, and I think some of that vision and that principle is starting to wear off around here. I'm hopeful.
Hear, hear. And I can tell you, Chad, if they had such thing as a co-speakership, Dusty and I think, could get a lot done for American people in that role. Baby steps.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it. We'll do it again.